There we go. And great. So you're everything that I know about Dogme comes from this book, and I've done a teacher training course with the writer, one of the writers of this book, Scott Thornberry. He did a course called I think it was Dogme methodology. I can probably find it here. I've got a certificate, by the way, for that job stuff. Here we go. I'll get that downloaded in a second. Yeah, but basically Dogme was a film movement, and this group of Danish filmmakers, they got tired of, you know, all the special effects, everything in Hollywood, and they wanted to make filmmaking more about the art of filmmaking. And Scott Thornberry, 2000, a little bit before 2000, he wrote, I think he gave a presentation at IATEFL about just the materials, the course books that get in the way between the teacher and the students and the people in the room. And the topics in course books aren't really, I mean, they're not always that relevant for the students. But you could instead, if you got rid of the materials, then you could make the class more about the students themselves. Rather than talk at the students with materials, you could use fewer materials and students talk with each other, or the teacher talks directly to the students, as in taking part of the conversation. So that was the goal of Dogme, and it's been around for about 20 years. There was a big group, a Yahoo group, and they had over 15,000 posts. That was like the home for Dogme teaching. Later on, it was taken down, as in no more Yahoo groups. But it doesn't need a home anymore. It's kind of spread out. You can find Facebook groups. There's some courses out there as well. So it's really grown. But basically, we'll look at these 5 things today. The goal is just to think about how we can be more responsive with students, as in students say something and we can respond more to them, or we can use the students say something and we use that to further teach them, rather than just doing one activity after another from a course book, maybe. I'll give you some one example, the CAT framework. This is a step-by-step kind of framework that you could do if you wanted to do a Dogme lesson. But it's not like Dogme always has stages, one step after another. The teacher comes in and might not have like a clear plan, as in step 1, do this, step 2, do that. It might be teacher comes in and this could happen or that could happen. And if this happens, then maybe I will do these different things, 2 or 3 different ways of doing it. If they do this, I'll do it in 2 or 3 different ways. And then, so the lesson plan might look more like a mind map rather than a sequence of steps. So, right, let me see. So most everything comes from this book, Teaching Unplugged. This Delta development series has a good list of books. I think August knows that. Has anyone else used any of these Delta teacher development books? These teaching lexically.
No, but Delta's 2 levels higher than Celta, and it's for training teachers.
Oh, it's a good step. Well, on Delta, you still teach students. It's a good, you get Delta and then you're in a good position to train or help teachers. But because you don't teach teachers on Delta, it's it's better for teaching students. But usually when people finish Delta, they start or they
Train teachers.
Right.
Oh.
Right. This Delta Teacher Development Series, it has a lot of really good books. There's one teaching English as a lingua franca. It's pretty good. The 3 main principles here from Thornberry at the bottom here is it's materials light, conversation driven, and focuses on emergent language. Later on, after writing that book, Teaching Unplugged, after writing this book, Teaching Unplugged, Scott Thornberry says he wishes he had said, instead of conversation driven, he wishes he had said something like text driven, because when we teach grammar, present perfect, usually we're thinking about something at the sentence level. But if you start thinking about text level, it's more about discourse. It's about a reading text, you're receiving a message from someone who wrote it. It's about communication rather than about isolated sentences. Scott Thornberry also came up with this idea of course books teaching bits of language, as in today, present perfect, tomorrow, past perfect, next week, future continuous. So he calls them grammar McNuggets, like the, the 麦当劳的鸡块, right? Like the chicken nuggets from McDonald's, grammar McNuggets. And you get these little bits, and then one day you have all this English ability. But Dogme allows you to work with the student's language. That's the resource, the student's language, rather than taking the language from a course book. So this is also in that book. It has implications for these 3 principles. So if it's conversation driven or text driven, then that means that the teacher probably needs to take part in conversation. Students need to feel comfortable and willing to talk. This all assumes that students are willing to talk with each other. If you have very, very low level students, then the conversation or speaking will have to be in the whole class, as in a student saying something and the teacher providing what they say. There's also a concept of emergent language, which is down here at the bottom. Right, so if you're teaching from a course book, then you have a syllabus, you know exactly what you're going to teach, you have target language, right? So this is pre-selected before the lesson. We know what we're going to teach the students. We're going to feed it to the students with a little spoon, right? Okay, even if it's student-centered, students are working together, great. But you still selected that for them, which means you've chosen the materials for them. You've chosen the speaking topics for the students. What if the student has something interesting they want to talk about, or there's something more interesting, more relevant to talk about? That can be part of the lesson. There was a lesson I watched not too long ago. it was a lesson about it was like a tour, it was a lesson about travel. Have you heard of this famous place? It's in Peru, South America. It's
No.
really high in the mountains. It's
Where?
in Peru. Yeah, it's called Machu Picchu. It was made by
Huh?
the Machu Picchu, right? Right. So
Sounds
it was
familiar.
right. It was made it was made a long time ago. Like a city. It was made in the mountains. Real long time ago. Anyways, it was about travel to Machu Picchu, and there was a picture of an animal on the side. And I guess it's that it's called a llama. But the students wanted to talk more about the llama rather than talking about Machu Picchu. So in a dogma kind of lesson, like the activity, because it had the animal on it, like it makes it very likely for the conversation about that picture to have the animal's name, information about the animal. So if you said, look at this, or if I tell you to talk about your favorite drink, then language that will probably come out of that, emerge from that, would be like, I'd like, I can't stand, I sometimes have this, I usually don't have that. When I'm blah, 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 I like to drink cola. Usually don't drink cola, but sometimes when we get together. But you see that, like adverbs of frequency, sometimes, usually, never, expressing likes and dislikes, that all emerges from talk about your favorite drinks. Okay, so a student could start talking about that and then say like they don't like soda, and then they start focusing on soda and say all the good and bad, or all the bad health benefits of soda. And then everyone's like, yeah, I didn't know that. It's really bad for your teeth. And then they start focusing on that. So that's emergent language. Everything the students say, the grammar, vocabulary that emerges from that speaking activity. The teacher, if they can capture that, like if they can catch what the students say, then they can help them get better. So there needs to be a way to focus on emergent language, or language, sentences, grammar, vocabulary that the students say, and then you can help them with that. That means capturing it, recording it, changing a sentence, making it better, reformulating. All right, so this is, I did this on a CELTA actually, for the candidates on CELTA to observe. I had to remove it though, because I didn't get the permission from the students to record the video. But basically I followed these steps. So I did step 1. I told the students to work in 2 groups. There were maybe 7 students. They worked in 2 groups. It was a game for the warmer. I told them they had to choose a topic, but I said, think of as many topics as you can. And I made it like a game. So whichever group has the most topics, you're the winner. And then they went into the breakout rooms. They thought of as many topics as possible. I brought them back. I told them to send that into the, let me see. Yeah. And I told them to send the topics in the chat box on Zoomu, which is like Zoom. So send me the topics. So both groups sent, and we could see which group had the most. The group that had the most topics, we chose, we went through the list and the students voted which topic they wanted to talk about. In the end, we chose language learning, like how you should learn a language. So step 1, that was done. Step 2, I told them to go into breakout rooms or go speak with their partner in groups. They need to think about what they have to say about the topic. So one person needs to ask questions like, what, I don't know, what do you have to talk about on the topic of language learning? Like how many languages have you learned? Do you think children or adults learn language easier? So one person asks questions for maybe 2 minutes. And then after 2 minutes, the other person starts asking questions. Okay. That's just to kind of get them thinking about the topic. And then we go to step 3, and I'll call a student to have a conversation with me. So the purpose of step 1 was to just get them interested, get them to choose a topic. Step 2 was to get them thinking about the topic and also speaking. Number 3 is step 3 is where we're going to get our sentences and phrases and vocabulary and grammar that we want to work with. We're going to focus on it in step 4, but step 3 is where we're going to collect it. So I get one student to interact with me, and I start asking questions about the topic, like language learning. How long have you been learning English? Have you learned other languages before? Do you want to study other languages? What are some good APPs for learning language or English? Blah, blah, blah. So as I ask questions, I'm taking notes of what the student says. So the student is going to answer my questions, but I'm going to write down what the student says, but content, not sentence by sentence. So a student, so I'll say, how long have you been learning English? Student says, I start learning English when I was 7 years old. It was on the weekends, and when I was in senior high school, we learned every day. It was for getting ready for the Gaokao, and in university, it was my major. So I will write down, started at 7, English exam, high school, English major. So I will write down just the content of what the student said, not the grammar. I don't care if the student makes grammar mistakes. Okay, and while the student is answering my questions and I'm writing the content so I can repeat it back to the student. So while I'm asking questions, I ask the other students, you write down the questions I ask. So all the students are focused on the questions that I will ask and writing them down. Okay, when the student is done answering my questions, then I repeat everything back to the student. So student has answered like 5 questions from me, for example. Then I'd say, so you said that you started learning English when you were 7 years old. And then after that, no, when you were 7 years old, you only had English on the weekends, so you weren't able to focus on speaking too much. When you were in university, there was also not much speaking opportunities, so you just had to prepare for an exam. You said it was very stressful. And during university, that's when you started to speak English much more, and you decided that you really enjoyed it because it was you wanted to make it your major, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just reading back my notes to the student. So the student should be confirming, yes, yes, that's what I meant. That's what I said. When I'm repeating back to the student, I tell the other students should be taking notes of what I say. So if they hear any good expressions I say. The hard thing about learning language is blah, blah, blah. What's difficult about English is blah, blah, blah. So they'll probably hear expressions that that I say, and they'll take notes of that. Okay, so I'm done with step 3. Step 3 was me asking questions, taking notes, repeating it back to students. All the students are taking notes of what questions I asked and what expressions I said. Step 4, is I ask the students, so what questions did I ask? The students tell me, and I write it down on the board. What expressions did I say? Students tell me, I write it on the board. So students might say, when did you start learning English? Okay, then I could indicate like, when did you start learning English? When did you start learning English? When did you start studying? When did you start doing something? I could drill that. What's difficult about the English is, what's difficult about grammar is, what's difficult about language learning is, so what's difficult about verb ing, yeah, or what's difficult about noun is, maybe a student will say something like, maybe in step 3, I asked the question, do children learn languages easier than adults? The student might say, it's best, it is good to learn language when you're very young. So I might say, the earlier the better, right? So I could put that on the board as well. So you should learn a language when you're young. The earlier the better. So sentence plus the earlier the better. So I can focus on all of that, just ways to make the speaking better, to upgrade it in step 4, basically. And then step 5, they repeat step 2. They just go again and they ask each other questions about language learning and give their own opinions. And then let's say we have 30 more minutes, then I can call another student and we can repeat it and then focus on a bit more, and then they go back and repeat the conversation. That's one way to do Dogme kind of teaching, but Dogme doesn't, it's not like it has first do this, then do that. It's often used like a stimulus, like a picture. Does anyone know what this is? Picture.
No.
Has anyone been to a place like this?
It's like night stands, right?
So right now, this is like, imagine imagine that everyone in the class is listening and willing to speak, of course. If the teacher just stops interacting, then the students, right, can have a chance to talk to each other. So they have these in different cities, like if you like, it's especially at nighttime, like you said, and there's lots of places to eat at. People set them like they open up on the street and you can go and try little snacks here and there. So this is called a food street or snack street. So a picture like this could be used to get students talking as a stimulus, as in show this, and you can have a few questions if you want to, like have you been up to a place like this or something like that. You don't need questions. It's just a reason to start talking. Because students have different experiences.
Yes.
So once the students start talking, it can be a short text. It could be the picture of a newspaper article or something like that. It could be even, I don't know. It could be something like this.
What's this? A video game? A book? Okay. It's a novel? What?
Right.
Horror.
So if I did this, showed this, and on the back there's a bit of information. It's in Spanish, of course, but if we had a group of people looking at this, they would all have different ideas. They would talk about it, like, what is it? It is a children's book. It's a scary children's book, actually.
Yes, it looks scary.
Right. Right. So it's for children. It's actually that series GP Goda. Have you heard of it?
No.
No? Okay.
What's it about?
Well, the writer.
Bites,
There
vampire.
we go. There we go. So if I showed that book and if someone knew the book, then automatically you would start asking questions like, what is it about, right? So it would be a good stimulus. It's just a scary story that that children can read, basically, and I use it because it helps improve. I've used it before because it helped improve my Spanish. I have the book in Chinese somewhere, but can't find it. You can also use scribes, as in this is a scribe, but you know, a long time ago, the scribes would copy down important texts. But when you're teaching a lesson, if you use a scribe in a group, this means maybe 3 people are working in a group. 2 students are working, and then you have one person writing down what the others say. So if you get the students to write down what the other 2 are saying, then this gives you something to work with later with teaching. So if you notice that they're overusing a grammar pattern, underusing a grammar pattern, all you need to do is correct it, give them a better example of that. And you don't need to help with the meaning, because, for example, like, I don't know, if I showed you this book, so you know that I'm learning Spanish. So imagine the students say something like, Matthew learned Spanish, I don't know, Matthew learned Spanish for 6 years. Then we know what the students mean. The student means that Matthew started learning in the past and it went up until the present. So the correct sentence would be, Matthew has been learning Spanish. So because the students generated that sentence, they generated the meaning, they just didn't use the right form. They didn't use the right grammar. There's no need to teach meaning there. You just need to give them the right form, the corrected sentence for that, or just improve it. What's a more natural way to say it or write it? You can use, of course, online is great because you can use the chat box and stuff. If you're teaching offline, then this means you're probably walking around taking notes and then writing it onto the board.
Mhm.
Or getting students to write directly on the board. I've done something like this where I've shown a picture from like the front page of a newspaper, put it on the board, and then tell the students to go up to the board and work together and decide what it's about or what they know about it, and to start writing it on the board. And once students get something written down, then there's something to work with. So that's an example of, can you hear the baby?
No, no baby.
Okay, there's a baby screaming. Okay. That would be a good Dogme moment, of course. Okay, so
Like a
you
stimulus, a good leading by
exactly
asking. Okay.
right, like then students would, like, if you hear the baby in the background, then you could start asking questions like how old, how long have you been married, and is she Chinese, and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Right, just it just all came from that stimulus of that baby crying, or like it could be a cell phone call, and then they overhear a conversation. Who was that? What was it about? Is it urgent? Right, those can lead to emergent like topics and language to look at. Thornberry also talks about, like, if you have a textbook and if you're following the textbook as the methodology, then you see the course units, you see the syllabus. But with Dogme, if you follow Dogme only teaching, then the syllabus is still the English language, but you don't know the topics that will be in the lessons, of course. So he talks about we've got a syllabus and we uncover the syllabus. So with the course book, you can just see the syllabus, but with Dogme, it's like the syllabus is there, it exists, but you have to uncover it. So if you have one lesson about the one I described about language learning, then maybe there could be a tiny, tiny little bit of teaching about present perfect, and that could be like you tick that off of the syllabus that you need to cover for the year. That's the final slide right there, keeping records. But let me see, a lot of teachers can't do Dogme in their classes all the time, but they can have Dogme moments, as in something happens and it's unplanned and the teacher spends some time and focuses on that for a little bit. It's important that you're able to capture some of what the students say and get it on the board, or so it can be visible, and then you can change it, upgrade it, but then they need to do something with it. As in, you could tell them to take notes of it, copy it down, or they can just, they see the notes and try to remember them, repeat the speaking activity, or you can have them make substitution tables, as in I said earlier, like start learning English when you are young. The earlier, the better. So if you wanted to practice, the earlier, the better, students could write sentences like, when you wake up, drink water. The earlier, the better. After you're done eating, brush your teeth. The earlier, the better. I don't know. The first time you go on a date with a girl, I don't know. Wait, hold on. Get to the restaurant first. The earlier, the better. The first day you have a class, be there on time. The earlier, the better. So students could make sentences. Just write down sentences, substitution tables as well. If that needs to be explained, just ask me later. And because people are really skeptical about Dogme stuff, no course book. We can't see what you're doing. You need to take notes, as in, what in the world did we learn today? You need to document progress. So if you have a course book that says, I don't know how well you're covering the course book, but it has a list on the syllabus of what's supposed to be covered. So if you're doing a Dogme lesson, you have to show that you are covering or uncovering something. So you could have a syllabus and you take screenshots, take pictures, actually offline. If you have a board full of sentences, you take pictures of that, and oh, there's present perfect there. You can tick that off of the syllabus, so that it's clear that you're doing something. All right. I don't have a final slide for this Dogme here, but I just want to say that doing Dogme style teaching and teacher training, actually, it has allowed me to focus more on the people in the room, whether they're children or adults or teachers, and really be I guess flexible with what I'm doing rather than following set procedures and following a PowerPoint. It can be liberating as well. There's several Facebook groups for Dogme also, that I know of, and it's good to share with like-minded people. Anyways, do you have any questions about Dogme? Would you want to try it?
I think there are many kinds of Dogme. The syllables or the curriculum. And you are talking today about like